Okay, we can start.
Awesome. Okay, so we can go. Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Please note that this session is being recorded to ensure accessibility for those unable to attend live and to support ongoing learning and organizational development. My name is BC Adebayo. I'm the Outreach and Partnership Manager for Manitoba Immigrant Employment Council, and it's great to have everyone here. But before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that our work at the Manitoba Immigrant Employment Council takes place at the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji Cree, Dakota, Dene, and Saltis people, the northern ancestral land of the Inuit, and the homeland of the Red River Métis Nation. Treaties 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 were established as reciprocal agreements to share the land we now call Manitoba. We recognize our responsibility to honor the spirit and the intent of the treaties. As newcomers and Canadians, we acknowledge the harms of the past and commit to learning from the working alongside Indigenous peoples in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Thank you for being here again today. This webinar is designed to equip small and medium-sized enterprises with practical tools and employer-focused strategies to identify, address, and prevent hate and racism in the workplace. Our goal is to provide actionable insights that help you foster a respectful, inclusive environment where employees feel safe. We look forward to a meaningful and practical session. It is now my pleasure to introduce our guest speakers and our project consultant for today's session. Dana Bergman is an adult educator and workforce development practitioner with 15 years of experience supporting newcomer integration, labor market participation, and employer readiness. She is the founder of Trellis Pathways, a Manitoba-based consultancy focused on inclusive workplace practices. Our work examines the employment-related dimensions of migration, particularly the alignment between settlement support, workplace systems, and organizational culture. Dana is currently engaged in a funded initiative supporting SMEs to identify and prevent hate and racism at the workplace, and brings applied experience in workforce needs, assessment, resource, and curriculum developments, with sector-specific projects supporting underrepresented groups. Thank you very much, Dana, for being here today. Maybe I can quickly also introduce our second guest speaker, Magdalene Kuma. She's the Executive Director of Ottawa Local Immigration Partnership and the founder of MAGS Management and Consulting Limited. With over 40 years of international experience and a master's in Migration and Diaspora Studies from Carleton University, she loves participating in DEI research and evaluation to help organizations create vibrant, inclusive workforces. As a dedicated advocate for immigrant economic integration, Magdalene developed the specialized toolkit to support SMEs in identifying and preventing hate in the workplace, providing businesses with the evidence-based strategies needed to foster safe and equitable cultures. We're very pleased to have them both share their insights with us today. I'll now invite Dana to begin our presentation.
Thank you so much, BC. I know for both Magdalene and myself, we are grateful to be here and grateful to have the opportunity to be part of this project and to work together. We've had a wonderful collaboration, and so let's get started. So welcome. I am Dana Bergman, and along with my colleague, Magdalene Kuman, we are pleased to introduce you to the Empowering Small and Medium Employers to Identify and Prevent Hate and Racism in the Workplace project, undertaken by the Manitoba Immigrant Employment Council and funded by Canadian Heritage through Regional Connections. The SME's project intent was to engage in a short-term human resources capacity building project to support small and medium enterprises that may not have adequate human resource training, staffing, knowledge, or resources, and could use newcomer integration support. The project addresses social justice and equity in the workplace, and was intended to support the development of resources and policies to facilitate a positive integration experience for both newcomers and employers. Following the development of the resources, direct consultant support was offered to a limited number of businesses across sectors. Within those organizations, those designated to work within HR functions received support to customize the resources, generate training options for consideration, and work toward integration into the business, ideally to the benefit of the organization, current employees, and job seekers. Through extended funding provided by Canadian Heritage, a series of 5 supporting videos was developed to enhance knowledge sharing and accessibility with stakeholders across the nation. This video introduces the project and its objectives, and we'll share a little bit more about the videos and the resources at the end of our speaking portion, but we wanted to share this introductory video with you in order to get us started and set the tone, set the framework for our discussion today.
Hello and welcome. I am BC from Manitoba Immigrant Employment Council. I am here to introduce you to a project funded by Canadian Heritage through regional connections called Empowering Small and Medium Employers to Identify and Prevent Hate and Racism in the Workplace. Businesses with fewer than 500 employees make up to 99.8% of our province's employer landscape. You are the engine of our growth, and as our community changes, your workplace culture becomes your greatest competitive advantage.
I'm excited to introduce you to a project that has been quietly but powerfully shaping workplaces across Manitoba, empowering small and medium employers to identify and prevent hate in the workplace. The project started with a simple question: how do we support small and medium employers in creating workplaces where everyone feels safe, included, and able to succeed, especially newcomers? We know that welcoming and integrating newcomers strengthens our communities, our businesses, and our workforce. But we also know that many employers want practical help. How do we talk about discrimination, racism, or hate clearly and confidently? How do we onboard employees from different cultural backgrounds? And what tools do we need to make inclusion a daily practice, not just a policy on paper? We partnered with employers across Manitoba to answer these questions. Our focus in this project is really on anti-hate and anti-racism.
When we first started this process, we knew we cared about our people, but caring and knowing how to address issues like racism and hate aren't always the same thing. We wanted something practical that would help us take the right steps.
We're here to discuss a little bit about the new design for the core cabinet's blog post.
Together, we've conducted assessments, reviewed policies, discussed challenges openly, and tested tools specifically designed for busy workplaces with fewer than 500 employees. What we learned is encouraging. Workplaces want to do the right thing. Employers care deeply about their employees. They want staff to feel respected, supported, and safe.
The conversations were honest. We talked about what was working and where we were unsure. But having the space and the tools to look at this together made all the difference.
Let's check the stock on the shelf.
Sometimes we just need a bit of help translating those good intentions into clear processes and practical steps. That's where this toolkit comes in. Through this project, we developed a structured organizational scan to help employers identify their opportunities and strengths for growth, a 6-level inclusion framework, ready-to-use policies, procedures, and reporting templates, onboarding and mentorship tools for newcomer integration, and training resources on communication, bias, and responding to hate or discrimination.
How's the scheduling for production looking? Line 1 looks on track, but line 3, I have a meeting scheduled to see how we can speed things up.
These tools were shaped with employers for employers. They're simple, practical, and designed to fit into real workplaces: construction companies, care organizations, shops, farms, factories, and offices.
The tools felt doable. They fit the pace of our workplace, and we could customize them so they made sense for our team.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Friesens. I too wanted to come and introduce myself. I've met some of you informally.
And they helped us see that even small, steady steps can make a real difference.
This project is also a pilot, and the employers we worked with helped us refine the tools so they reflect real experiences, real capacity, and the realities of fast-paced work environments. My hope is that these resources help you feel confident. Confident in how you welcome newcomers, confident in how you identify and address discrimination, racism, or hate, and confident in building a workplace culture where everyone, no matter where they come from, can feel like they belong.
It gave us a starting point, a language for things we didn't always know how to name, and a way forward that feels possible.
Look at the mission, the vision, and the values concept of the company, and just really helping you get a sense of who we are.
I invite you to explore the tools, try them out, adapt them, and share them with your team. And if you're just starting this journey, that's okay. Every step forward counts.
When employees feel safe, they are more productive, more creative, and more likely to stay.
You'll spend a little bit more time with Javier on some of the safety protocols.
In a tight labor market, being a destination employer for everyone isn't just the right thing to do. It's a smart business move.
It's about building a culture where belonging is the standard, not the exception.
Whether you're in construction, agriculture, retail, or tech, these tools were made for you. I invite you to explore the toolkit and take that first step. Every small step forward strengthens your business and our province. Together, let's build workplaces where everyone, no matter where they come from, can fully belong and succeed. Thank you for being a leader in Manitoba's inclusive future.
So we're very pleased to introduce that video to you. And as I said, later on, we'll share the rest of the resources and where they're available so that you can access them beginning anytime. But how did we get started in this project? This project followed an evidence-informed foundation or process to design, to understand both the policy landscape and the lived experiences of workplaces and newcomers. We began with a review of employment law, human rights frameworks, and leading practices to reduce racism and related to racism and hate in the workplaces. That foundation informed a research phase where we gathered insights from employers and newcomers, which then shaped the development of the practical inclusion framework. The framework was then tested through engagement with participating small and medium enterprises, allowing us to identify both opportunities and challenges that ultimately informed our project recommendations. Informed and involved engagement through online surveys, focus groups, and interviews guided by a mixed methods approach to gather quantitative and qualitative data was used to identify the directional focus for resource development. Research and knowledge gathering focused on understanding the lived experiences, strengths, and challenges of both employers and newcomers in small and medium-sized workplaces in Manitoba. This phase ensured that the project tools and resources would be grounded in real workplace realities and reflect both organizational and employee perspectives. While the key performance indicators of the project identified surveys and focus groups as primary ways to support consultative engagement and address the distance nature of engaging directly with employers or newcomers, We worked to look beyond that. While not strictly rural, the project was intended to be province-wide, imposing limitations that can be overcome through digital engagement. By implying rural strategies of co-locating resources and facilities to overcome spatial barriers and inequities, we sought to involve additional participants who were more comfortable sharing their stories and perspectives in an in-person setting. The project scope did not include this requirement or suggest this as an option, though expanding the scope of our community engagement and going where the people are already located increased the reach of the project, the robustness of the engagement, the quality of responses, and those ultimately informed the resources being developed. While the project initially targeted 5 SME participants, early engagement from employers revealed strong employer interest and perceived relevance. This resulted in an organic expansion from 5 to 7 participating organizations, with an additional large employer taking on an individualized approach to accessing and using the resources, and a 9th employer, also an SME, has deferred engagement to later this month due to organizational timeline needs. The inclusion of 2 large employers in the group of 7 was with distributed operational sites provided important comparative context, demonstrating that even large organizations with formal HR infrastructure continue to face practical challenges in operationalizing anti-hate and inclusion practices at their local levels. This reinforced the broader applicability and relevance of the project across organizational scales. Participating employers engaged in structured organizational scans, examining existing policies, practices, and workplace cultures. Their leadership and operational staff participated in guided discussions to identify organizational strengths, gaps, and priority areas for development. Their engagement emphasized collaborative reflection and positioned employers as active contributors to the co-development and refinement of the resources. And this approach really strengthened the evidence base by incorporating diverse organizational contexts and capacities. Of the participating employers, you can see in the pie chart, 57%, or 4 out of 7, were from healthcare and social assistance sectors. And together with the other early adopters in the sectors identified, we see organizations where there is a high degree of significant newcomer employment, multilingual workforces, and close-knit or community-based environments, and or decentralized or distributed work sites. The project engagement generated critical insight into employer and newcomer workplace expectations or experiences, informing subsequent resource development and implementation processes. It identified organizational strengths and readiness across participating employers. It documented common structural gaps related to training, reporting processes, and onboarding supports. It helped to capture newcomer perspectives on workplace integration, communication, and support needs. And it established strong employer partnerships grounded in trust and ongoing participation, while it also ensured tools and resources were informed by lived workplace experience rather than just theoretical assumptions. This engagement was essential in ensuring that the project was grounded in real-world organizational contexts, and by engaging both employers and newcomers, the project established an evidence-informed foundation that guided resource development and subsequent phases of the initiative. Magdalene is going to take the next little bit to introduce the inclusion framework and a few of the resources that were included and the levels that resulted out of the research and knowledge gathering phase.
Thank you so much, Dana. Can everyone hear me clearly? Yes?
Yes,
Good.
we can hear you, Magdalene.
We can hear me. Okay, so I was really happy to work on this project with Dana and with the Immigrant Immigrant Council for the reason that they're addressing something which is really important, especially in the current times that we are living. And so when we developed the inclusion framework, we took into consideration 100% what we heard from the ground, from the lived experiences of newcomers, and from what obtained in the workforce. So the inclusion framework is set at 6 levels. So at level 1, we look at foundational awareness, helping to equip organizations with the basics of not just reacting to situations, but basics to enable them to understand the foundation of hate and racism in the workplace and what's needed. At level 2, we look at self-reflection and inclusive communication. Each of us, as an individual, first of all, have a responsibility in the workplace to each other. And inclusive communication, creating a safe space, requires us to reflect on how we think around discrimination, hate, racism, so that our behaviors and inclusive communication can be anchors to how we communicate with each other. The third part, the third level, is empowerment and training. In there, we provide managers, organizations with tools that could help empower the staff to be able to identify and address hate and racism. We move further in the toolkit to level 4, which looks at strategies to proactively integrate everyone in the workplace. And then on to level 5, we look at advanced support systems, where we take a look at buddy systems, creating employee resource groups, and creating a culture where when a newcomer comes into your workplace, there is a system for onboarding them and ensuring that they have a part to play in providing feedback that can be addressed through the organization. So it's removing systemic barriers as well. And lastly, at the highest level, is enduring legacy. This is where we would like all organizations to get to, where your organization is so strong, it's a leader in the community. Others can look up to it, and you have a role to play in creating a legacy that a workplace is so inclusive that everyone wants to work with you because they feel that great sense of belongingness in your workplace. It's really important for us to understand hate and racism. And this particular image that you're seeing here is called the Pyramid of Hate, which was developed. You'll see some notes in the guide by a team at in a university. The base of this pyramid is where they identify that biased attitudes is the base for building hate. And under biased attitudes, we look at things like stereotyping, insensitive remarks, fear of difference, non-inclusive language, microaggressions, people who are unconcerned with the negative impact of beliefs. The problem with those biased attitudes is that if we are not mindful of them, it very quickly can grow into acts of bias. And when we look at acts of bias, we see a lot of it happening, not just in the workplace, but in society across countries now. Bullying, ridicule, name-calling, slurs, intimidation, social avoidance, dehumanization, bias jokes. And again, if these are left unchecked, you see them happening in your organization, but we do nothing about it, it then escalates to the third level of hate, which is discrimination. And discrimination takes many different forms, from economic discrimination, when you look at job discrimination, educational discrimination, employment discrimination, social and housing discrimination, segregation, denial of basic civil and human rights. This is very, very serious. Again, if left unchecked, we move up the ladder to bias-motivated violence. And this is where you have acts being committed: murder, rape, assault, arson, terrorism, vandalism, threats, exploitation. And again, if left unchecked, this pyramid of hate moves to the top, which is genocide. So I'll just share a small personal experience here with you. A few years ago, I visited the Genocide Museum in Rwanda. And I know at this moment, I had not yet seen the Pyramid of Hate, but in that moment, when I witnessed through the museum, the hundreds of thousands of people who had been murdered, when I did when I worked on this toolkit, I thought about that incident. And I remember walking out of that space and thinking in my own heart, I don't want to ever have I don't want to experience it, because it was an escalation of biased attitudes that eventually led to the genocide. So as workers and workplaces in Canada, we need to be very mindful that small things can escalate. And the reason that we've put this toolkit together is to help educate workplaces on some of these issues so that they are more motivated to take action. Go ahead, Dana. And so one of the toolkits is developed with an environmental scan. And in that environmental scan, it provides several leading questions to help SMEs identify the strengths and the weaknesses. And we have questions based on each level of the inclusion framework. Go ahead. In foundational awareness, I'm now going to look at some of the resources that you will find at each level in the toolkit. So we are looking at levels 1 and level 2. So in there, we're going to have assessment checklists for SMEs. This is a quick guide when you can do it on your own, or your human resource manager or as an organization, to say, do we have X, Y, and Z? Because when you can easily identify what you have and what you don't have, then you can address what you don't have. We have provided you with formal policy templates. We have provided you in there with reporting and incident templates. And we have included an inclusive communication guide that we encourage you to work together with your staff. So one of the benefits of this toolkit is that the learning of your employees will not just remain within the walls of your organization. They will go beyond that, because what we are doing is that we are changing mindsets and behavior towards not just creating an inclusive organization, but also expanding beyond the organization to create inclusive families, inclusive communities. The next levels, level 3 and level 4, here are some of the resources that we have in there. There's a managerial training modules, unconscious bias workshops, inclusive onboarding checklists, and mentorship and buddy systems. Having worked with newcomers for a couple of decades now, a lot of employers have asked, how do we make them feel included and welcome? Well, we have provided you in this at level 4 an inclusive boarding checklist, so that when newcomers come into your organization, you could help them identify where they're feeling comfortable and where they're not, where they feel welcome and where they're not. Because as a leader in your organization, you having that feedback allows you to be able to make the changes that are necessary for them to establish that sense of belonging. And level 5 and level 6. Here we look at systemic barriers that inhibit that sense of belonging. We look at advanced support frameworks for the organization that has an impact on the level of belonging and welcome that a newcomer faces. We look at strategic DEI goal setting, and we look at standards and how we work with our external partners. So in essence, working with this toolkit moves us from understanding the very foundations of identifying hate and racism to right at the top to say, we not only just identify and address them right now, but you know what? We are creating a community that says no to hate, no to racism, and that eventually impacts all of us who are living in Manitoba.
Thank you, Magdalene. So how did we engage in testing this? Well, we wanted to, part of the project was to engage with employers, and we've already discussed that a little bit. But to ensure that the tools were robust, we partnered with 5 established SMEs who have been in business for more than 10 years and 2 large employers representing a combined workforce of over 3,000 employees. The pilot focused on high density, newcomer environments to test the toolkit's efficacy in complex real-world situations. We had strong and sustained engagement across employers and newcomer communities, which strengthened the project's evidence-based and practical relevance. Some real big highlights for us were that our engagement exceeded our initial targets, reflecting strong cross-sector interest and participation. We had participation that extended beyond SMEs to include large employers with distributed operational sites, which really validated the relevance across organizational scales and HR capacities. It established trusted partnerships with employers, leadership teams, as newcomer participants, successfully engaged organizations with diverse operational structures, workforce compositions, and geographic contexts. It facilitated open, reflective dialogue on complex and sensitive workplace topics, and ensured that the project tools and resources were grounded in that lived experience we've talked about and in operational realities. Finally, it really strengthened organizational readiness and commitment to inclusive workplace practices. As part of wrapping up or working toward an understanding of the evaluation of the project, we gathered some data, and implementation data suggests that there has been meaningful structural progress by all employers. Formal anti-hate policies and reporting mechanisms show the strongest maturity, with the average implementation at stage of 4 out of 5 indicating full implementation across many organizations. Inclusive onboarding supports also demonstrate strong uptake, with 70% reporting full implementation. And while more advanced external-facing DEI systems remain at an earlier stage, foundational structural elements are clearly established across participating employers. So what does this mean for us strategically? What it tells us is that employers are strongest in formal policy and reporting systems. Their onboarding integration is emerging as a key operational strength. Structural barrier processes are developing toward maturity, and advanced DEI infrastructure, so things like employee resource groups or external reporting, remains early stage, which is typical for SMEs in the developmental process. We also had a few challenges. While foundational policy and reporting systems demonstrate strong maturity, deeper cultural and leadership integrated systems remain in earlier development stages. Advanced DEI infrastructure, such as those ERGs and formal external leadership positioning, averages between early planning and initial development. Leadership level DEI goal setting and structured newcomer support systems are progressing, but they are not yet consistently embedded. Participation levels in the project were also influenced by the timeline, the seasonality, and organizational readiness. These contextual factors affected the pace and the depth of implementation for some organizations, particularly in culture-based initiatives that require broad staff engagement. Overall, the data reflects a realistic maturity progression. Organizations have established foundational compliance systems, and they're now advancing toward deeper integration and culture-shaping practices. This demonstrates to us that there's a strong structural foundation, policy, and reporting, as evidenced in the previous slide. Culture and leadership systems are developing next, Advanced DEI leadership infrastructure is still early stage, again, typical for SMEs. And there is engagement variability influenced by the depth of culture level implementation. So there's a clear sequencing of organizational maturity. Magdalene?
Yes. So now I want to talk a little bit about the methodological integrity of the project. That while it's a small scale, the methodology that we use had a lot of integrity to it. So we address this through expanded outreach, flexible timelines, and relationship-based approaches. We approached it based on trusted networks while extending engagements to new participants. A huge thank you goes to the Manitoba Immigrant Employment Council, because these relationships that have already been established in the community were very vital to this project. We prioritized culturally safe, respectful participation, both across the employers we were dealing with as well as with the newcomers. And we strengthened the validity and relevance of project findings through sustained engagement. And again, I want to say a special thank you to Dana, because she, with the work with employers, the whole network that has been built in Manitoba over the years was also very integral to this project. So what are the recommendations we have for future engagements with the SMEs? One, from today, we're going to give you access to ready-to-use digital resources. So we're going to put the links here and as well send them to you later. Ready-to-use environmental scan that you could do on your own with your management team, with your HR team in your organization to find out where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. We are providing you with a workbook that you could do it step by step, and as well as videos to guide you with the process. We are providing structured follow-up support to sustain your policy implementation. And we would really like to recommend to establish a community of practice amongst employers in Manitoba, or kind of a quarterly HR roundtable, something that brings people together. And on my little diagram here on the side, you see a community of practice framework where we're looking at some organizational communication strategies. We're looking at, social justice and well-being strategies, and also how we support collective practices together so that everyone, they're sharing, they're learning from each other, they're identifying areas for improvement, but most importantly, having a community of practice helps you to stay engaged in moving the bar from identifying hate and racism in the workplace to addressing it and being very proactive in addressing it.
Thank you, Magdalene. So we've taken a look at the quantitative data, the numbers, the information that employers have provided us that tells us where they are in their journey. But we also wanted to share a few of the comments that relate to the qualitative data, the narrative, their stories, what happened in real practice, and how do they feel about engagement with the project and with the toolkit. And so here are a few of the comments that we got from employers as part of the final evaluation process. One employer identified that the whole toolkit is a good resource and helpful, and that more than establishing a program, it really provided insight into the hate and racism issue. Another employer identified that they were pleased to be part of the project, and that within their organization, they felt it was very relevant because more than 50% of their workforce was newcomers. And so a real strong need in that organization. Another employer identified that the toolkit itself is outlined and appropriate, and that the consistent contact with the consultant was useful and a good incentive to stay the course. And so in terms of providing that ongoing support so that people can sustain their progress. That, again, that's a good place for a potential community of practice to come in, because we can hold each other accountable through that process. Another organization that is still actively engaging in the project and looking at next steps in their initiatives is identified that it is a great initiative for small or medium-sized organizations, and that they were glad to have been selected or included in the project, which is really encouraging. And finally, I included one statement from a large employer to just validate that while the program or the project targeted SMEs, that there's a real key need across all sectors and across all organizational capacities. And they identified that it was extremely helpful in identifying gaps, and that they still needed that outside eye to help note that leadership training programs specific to cultural awareness are very much needed. The templates and toolkit are great resources to refer to when customizing an internal incident reporting process. And so that was a really validating experience for us to receive that feedback and know that it had an impact across our selected demographic, but also outside the demographic, validating the project as a whole, sort of from two different perspectives. We are so glad to have you in the room, and we want to thank you for taking time to join us to hear about this project. So before we head into the Q&A discussion, I do want to share with you the full video series and where you can find it. And so this is the Manitoba Immigrant Employment Council website. It's manitoba.iec.ca. It's pretty easy to find. And the resources that were developed as a part of this toolkit initiative and this project initiative are under the Employers and Resources tab. And they're located right here, right in the middle. And so we have your assessment checklist, your environmental scan, the 6-level inclusion framework PDF, which contains all the resources, the references, additional materials for consideration, links that would take you to additional resources that could help your training. There's a quick reference if you want to just use the checklists and the tools, or copy them or print them for a session or a huddle or a workplace discussion, a leadership meeting that you're going to have, then they're really easy to access. There is a training presentation in here that is an interactive PowerPoint that you can download that correlates to the bias and microaggression and systemic barriers training agenda in the toolkit. So it's already developed for you with direct references and facilitator notes that take you to the appropriate places in the guide and toolkit, so you don't even have to develop it. You can just customize it and implement it at your organization. And then there's this series of 5 videos. So we watched video 1. Video 1 and 2 were uploaded recently. 3, 4, and 5 were uploaded this week. So we're very excited that the complete toolkit is there to share with you. And we encourage you to take a look at those resources. Thanks again so much for being willing to be here and listen to our presentation and share the results of this work that we've been doing over the past year. We're grateful that you took the time.
Thank you very much, Dana and Magdalene, for those insightful and practical presentations. This is part of our project activity to bring to you resources and tools to support employers' capacity to hiring newcomers at the workplace, to provide these resources for employers to look in the way of newcomers that are in the province, so as to provide workplace support. And so we'll now move into Q&A of the session. We invite you to share your questions, your reflections, or scenarios in the chat box, or if you prefer, you may use the raise hand feature and we can invite you to unmute. No question is too small. This is an opportunity to clarify, explore practical applications, and discuss how these strategies can work within your organizations. So please feel free to raise your hand or unmute to ask your question. Okay. Oh, thank you very much, Rania, for your comments in the chat room. Thank you. The question about implementation. Okay, Rania has a question. I had many employees. Do you want to speak, or we should just read this out, Rania?
Hi, BC. It's nice to see you all. Sorry, my camera, I don't know why my computer wants me to restart, so that's why I'm not able to be on camera.
It's great. But thank you for being here.
Yes,
It's also nice to worthy to mention that Rania is from our IECC network. She's the director from IEC BC, and then she joined this call. Thank you very much, Rania, for joining.
And what a great effort. And Magdalene, so happy to see you. I'm sure this had a lot of flashbacks from the SME project we did together. It's great, and it's such a great addition to the resources out there needed and all. Just also knowing and working with SMEs in particular, from reflections from across the country, from other IECs as well, as my question really says, that many employers don't really actively seek out anti-racism or DEI programs, especially SMEs. And so from your experience of implementing this program, what usually prompted those employers to engage with a program like this? Or what do you think, even moving forward, how do you think when we come to scale up these resources and the efforts done here, because they're fantastic and very comprehensive, but what's going to be the motivation, or how's the approach to SMEs to be? How are they going to find out that they need this? Because in most cases, they don't necessarily, it's not something they think they need, unless there's a specific incident that happens, right? Just interested to know learn your thoughts on that.
Jana, do you want to go first, and then I'll follow up?
Sure. So I think the experience that we had through this was that we had significant early engagement, and a big part of it wasn't necessarily organizations that had experiences, but because they had a large workforce demographic that included newcomers, they were interested in addressing this early. And so often we don't look for something until we have a need. And so I think that that's probably not going to go away. But part of that is trying to change the narrative around how do we address or work with newcomers in our midst? How do we create an environment that is still productive? And so one of the things, when I work with manufacturers, when I work with people in care organizations, one of the things that keeps coming up is we want people to be productive, and we know that if there's conflict, they're not productive, and we need for people to be able to do their jobs. We need for people to be able to do their jobs well. And so how can we help them do that? And so when we guide them through the process of understanding that if we can reduce conflict in an organization, whether you've experienced it yet or not, now is a good time to start that process. And so one organization that I'm continuing to work with is a small organization of 10 or 12 people, and they have a pretty open atmosphere. They don't have a lot of formal policies. And so our discussion has really centered around, now is a good time to put the infrastructure in place so that as your organization grows, that you have some of these addressed. One of the things that we know about Manitoba employers is that they often scale up from small to medium, or move from family-owned businesses to corporate businesses within a very short period of time, and then they struggle with scaling their model. And so, the ongoing goal is to address that model early on so that they have the infrastructure in place and the workplace expectations in place as their organizations grow. I'm not sure that that's a great example, but part of it comes from, I think people really have to understand that there's a need, and they have to desire to have that need. Unfortunately, that need is often triggered by when something happens that has to be dealt with. But we did see good, strong interest and across sectors and across organizations. Again, the impetus often if they have a large newcomer demographic in their workplace. Is that helpful at all, Rania?
Yes, yeah. It's a good starting point for sure. Mm-hmm. So being able to kind of look at, employers that do have a large base of newcomers or depend on hiring a lot of newcomers, then that's a great starting point for sure. Yeah. Thank you, Dana.
And I can expand on that a little bit more, Rania. And here are a few facts I want us to consider in terms of the engagement with employers and what we're hearing. So first of all, it's important if employers are not doing this for us to try to get to them to be proactive. And why they need to be proactive is that right now in Canada, the statistics show us that 1 out of every 4 people is a newcomer or an immigrant to Canada. These numbers will continue to increase in workplaces, and it's really important for us to understand whether they are feeling welcomed, whether they have that sense of belonging, because we know that the greater sense of belonging a person has in the workplace, the greater the retention and the return on investment for employees is far greater. And here are a few bits of statistics I want to share with you. In Canada right now, reports on hate and racism from Statistics Canada reported that in 2023, there were 4,777 incidents reported, not reported, and that represented 32% increase from 2022. So we have to be mindful of incidents of hate and racism that are being reported, and to ensure that our workplaces are equipped with it with knowledge, skills, and before it actually happens. Secondly, we looked at in the literature review, and this is all part of the toolkit you're going to get. The most common motivations, according again to Statistics Canada, were race and ethnicity. There were 2,128 incidents reported. Religion, 1,884 incidents motivated by religion. And also sexual orientation, 860 incidents reported. So there's an impact on newcomers. And we also found out in our study, the most common reason that newcomers gave for not reporting cases of racism or hate was the fear of retaliation. So many of them would just live with it because they want to keep their jobs, and they are afraid that if they report it, they're going to lose their jobs. And we want employers to be mindful of that. We also, we didn't go into all of the data that we collected, but there were cases where employers said to us, everything is okay in the workplace. There are no problems. Like if a newcomer experiences hate or racism, they can easily report it. But when we ask the newcomers, on the other hand, some of them would not ever report it, even though they're experiencing it. And the last piece of statistics I want to share with you is workplace discrimination. So Statistics Canada also carried out a survey and found that over 51% of racialized people aged 15 and older reported discrimination or unfair treatment in the 5 years leading to the survey. So the most common location for this discrimination was the workplace. And so to just summarize my answer here, Rania, is that we know that employers don't know what they don't know. But at the same time, we are hoping that this project will raise awareness to say, you may not think it's an issue, but it's better for you to be proactive and ensure that your organization has the resources to be able to deal with it if it happens. Okay, does that bring any more clarity for you, Rani?
No, it's great, Max. And I put a comment in there saying I think there needs to be also. I think all the stats that you said are really good. The framing of why you need this needs to be in itself a part of the toolkit that needs to be part of those that are doing outreach to employers for this, because I think this is where people struggle to be able to sell a program like this, because as you know, you've heard it before in the project we've done together, Max, like SMEs don't want to admit that they have a problem, even if they think they have a problem. And so, and it is a very, it is a very sensitive topic, right? And so this is where it's like, it's nice to know which angle to reach out to them from, to be able to kind of say, I'm not insinuating you have a problem. but let's be proactive here, right? And more importantly, if we're ever able to kind of say this then implies or will have implications on your productivity and your business, then bingo, right?
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what motivates those businesses that are most of the time very tight in time and resource. Thank you so much, guys. This is amazing effort. Well done. This is great.
Thank you, Rania. And again, it's all in the toolkit. The beginning of the toolkit provides all of this data and context for why this project is so important. Thanks.
So one other quick thought, Rania, in response to how do we engage and how do we ensure that organizations take the opportunity to engage? One of the things that we could probably work with, at least on a local level, is for those municipalities or cities or towns that have a self-directed immigration program or pilot. Many of the communities in southern Manitoba, for instance, have immigration programs. Working with the civil governments that or the organizations that are directing those programs and encouraging them to have a to go through the environmental scan so that any organization, any business that wants to access or utilize that program, that immigration program, that they have an opportunity to walk through a guided environmental assessment process so that they understand where their strengths and development areas so that they are, number one, not caught unawares. Number two, can work at things from a proactive approach. And number three, have a little bit of support. So we know that this project is ending, but we also know that there is available support in the region for that kind of thing. But having an, requiring organizations to go through that environmental scan, and even if they walk through the toolkit on a self-directed, self-guided, self-paced timeline, if they have a little bit of support at the front end to identify, what are the main things or key things that we could do to get this off the ground. And even to identify and become aware of some of those statistics. So that's maybe an approach that could be considered. So if you're in a jurisdiction where you have an immigration program or pilot or connected to RCIP or something like that, try and work with those organizations' leadership to see if you can integrate something like this into the process for all the businesses that are taking part in the program, and see if that can make a difference. So that was really robust. We have a little bit more time for questions. I did see that there was a hand up a little bit earlier. Please, if you have a question, raise your hand or turn your microphone on and please chime in. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Dana. I haven't seen any hand, but it's worthy to mention that, conversations have started with IRCC on the need to have the project as one of the criteria for employers looking to participate in the RCIP and RNI program. And so we've had the first meeting. I think someone joined this call as well to listen on and to take note and feedback to see how this can be integrated into part of the process for employers that would be a part of the RCIP and RNI program. Okay, Nicole. You can unmute to ask your question. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for this information. One of my questions that I have in regards to a diverse workspace is sometimes resources for individuals that are looking for community connection. And we find Regional Connections is very helpful with that, as is like the city immigration program. But I wonder if there is a resource, and maybe I'm just not aware of it, of availability of religious groups that are in specific areas and what those groups entail. And I know when I asked our city in regards to that of, is there something available in, what type of Catholic church or what type of Anglican church? Some of those things are very important to some of our newcomers. And I feel like I don't have that information and I don't know where to look. And I don't know if this is the right place to look, or if you can kind of direct me of where that is. And I think I'm just looking for a space to share with them to say, I don't know, which I'm happy to admit, but how can I help them find those resources if it's not the city and they're not getting that from their immigration settlement worker? Is that something that you have dug into with part of this project of inclusivity, or is that something that maybe could come in the future?
So some of those resources are available. I shared with you the MBIEC website, but if you go to the Pembina Valley Local Immigration Partnership website, so pvlip.ca, there are a number of different resources on there. PVLIP's mandate is working with communities and civil infrastructure to build welcoming and inclusive communities. And so if there is a gap in resources that you're looking for something specific like that, they would be the organization that would be able to collect that information and share it with you. MBIEC's mandate is working with employers. But there's a different set of resources that's available on the PVLIP website that I highly encourage you to view. There's even an annual cultural celebration calendar. So if you're looking for information on different cultural celebrations or religious observances throughout the year, that information is available there too.
Great, I'm happy to take a look at that. And then I guess secondarily to that, as an employer, is there specific encouraged strategies of how educating our staff can be viewed as a positive role in education and inclusion as opposed to calling out specific cultures? And I know, like, it's culturally acceptable to have, you know, Indigenous learning or to have speakers come from specific groups, but how do you incorporate some of that learning without it looking specifically targeted and almost discriminatory when you really are just trying to broaden horizon?
Yes, I can take that question, Dana.
Sure.
Yes, that's a wonderful question, and we did do this to add to the integrity of the toolkit. So myself personally, having worked with so many cultures across, you know, the last, I don't know, 40 years, it's where you have people saying, well, it's this person do this person do that, you know, and it's like sometimes it looks like so different for everybody. So what we've done is on the module of empowerment and training, we have provided resources, even a training format, a PowerPoint presentation that managers can actually use to create like little mini training scenarios for everybody to be on the same page, for things like inclusive communication, for dealing with microaggressions. We actually have role plays in there that your staff can participate in. So I know, Dana, maybe you can talk a little bit more to that as well. So there are resources in the form of trainings that we have put together to bring that feeling of inclusion and not to separate anyone in the organization.
Right. So, you know, one of the
sounds like I need to go to the website.
So yeah, and so I can pop this open, but part of the empowerment and training level 3 modules in the toolkit include a 60 to 90 minute training agenda. And in the resources on the website, what you'll find is this downloadable resource, which is a PowerPoint, which guides you through the process that connects to the training agenda exactly. And in here, there are filled in facilitator notes. There's an optional land acknowledgement here that you can just plug and play with your company's name if your organization doesn't have a land acknowledgement. If you do, then you can replace it into here. With one of the organizations, with one of the active employers that I worked with, they said, you know, we are a senior care organization. The people who live here are residents. We want to connect the cultural heritage of our region to Indigenous culture and the value that's placed on elders in our land acknowledgements, so that it is relevant for the people who work here, it is relevant for our board, and it makes sense for why we would even have a land acknowledgement, because we know this is an area of resistance for the people in our organization. So I helped them to draft a customized land acknowledgement. so that they could connect sort of all of those points around the value placed on elders, on elder care, on respect for the elderly, and how that connects both the heritage of that organization as well as Indigenous heritage, to show that we have shared values and to have shared understanding. And so customizing the resources might include something like that. The resources include, a specific way to go through welcome and introductions, talking a little bit about what are we going to be building knowledge around. All of the notes give you ideas for how long should this discussion take, how do you want to frame the discussion, and it gives you specific areas that you can go to in the toolkit that you can print off, that you can use to guide the conversation. How do you walk through those skill development scenarios that Magdalene talked about? There are 4 of them in the toolkit that deal with very specific different topics. One is a leadership or performance management discussion. One is a microaggression. One is somebody witnessed an inappropriate behavior. How do you report it? And all depersonalized and really there to build knowledge and to build awareness and to build skill in anecdotal practice situations. And so it's all in there. How do you do reporting and support in your organization? Where do people find the information? There's even a little challenge here. You can set up a little game or a little challenge where people have to go and search your respectful workplace policy or your incident reporting form for key terms, report it, they get entered into a draw. That way you know that people are engaging with the materials and they're looking for where to find it. What are some examples of things that people struggle with? There's a couple examples. So there's, behavior expectations across cultures around respect for women in leadership. There's behavior expectations around cultures around communication and feedback that you can use if they're meaningful and might bring out other discussions that will address sort of what are the intercultural tensions that maybe you've experienced or witnessed that bring it up in a little bit of an organic way. There are some specific examples in there as well. And then just as a group talking about what are your key takeaways, what are we going to do next as a company, as an organization, as a department, as an individual, and so what else? And so really exploring this idea of what else would we talk about, or what else would you be interested in terms of future information or training? And many of these things, these tools, you don't have to do a 60 to 90 minute workshop. You can take them and pull them out and say, if this happened in our workplace, what would we do? And here's a scenario that's depersonalized, that's not connected to anything that happened in our organization. You can give a disclaimer that this is not connected to anything that really happened. But I just want to know, what would we do? Because if everybody would address the process differently, that identifies already for you that there's a gap, that people don't know how to report it, that they wouldn't know what to do. And so this is one of the tools that's available for you to use. You can customize it, you can download it, but it's all connected to the toolkit and guide. You can facilitate a 60 to 90 minute discussion workshop with your staff. And it's not personalized or connected to any specific context in your organization. Is that helpful, Nicole?
Yeah, it looks like there's some great stuff, and I'll check out PV Lip as well. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. What I would also encourage, Nicole, is and for everyone here, take time to read through the PDF document, because it's not extremely I've tried to make it not too heavy in reading, but if you kind of just read through it, it will probably shape the way that you want to do this in your organization. We also have some tools if you wanted to develop a mentorship program or buddy system to support newcomers. And also there's an onboarding survey for newcomers. When they come into the organization, 30 days later, you could, we've created all these, like easy to use, that you could send out to them so that you get a sense of how they are feeling in the organization. It's anonymous. You will get the results, and you will then be able to make small changes that perhaps need to be made. And we have also included a section right at the front to talk about change. You know, sometimes when we have to implement these things in our workplaces, we need to think about the change process and how our employees will respond. So for the HR manager, the person who's in charge, really go through this because we provided some tips on how to approach those changes that you would like to make. Okay, so there's lots of information in there to guide.
Thank you. We've come to the end. We've passed 10 minutes past the time. Thank you very much. A big thank you to everyone for staying all through and for the great conversations and insights into this. Please feel free to reach out to us, to me, BC at Manitoba IEC, or to Dana and Magdalene. And if you also need any resources apart from what we presented today, please feel free to reach out. We'll be more than happy to provide those. Thank you very much to everyone. Thanks, and have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. BC, can you stay
Thank you,
back,
everybody.
Dana?
Yes,
Right,
sure,
yeah.
sure.
Okay,
I'm just
thanks.
waiting
The
for
team.
Rima to